Connecticut is often described as a wealthy state, and that description is accurate on paper. We rank near the top nationally in income, asset ownership, and property values. Enormous wealth exists here. But Connecticut is also one of the most unequal states in the country. Those two facts are not separate. They are connected by policy choices, especially tax and budget choices that determine who contributes, who benefits, and whose needs are treated as optional. For years, Connecticut has pointed to budget surpluses as evidence of fiscal success. But a surplus does not automatically mean the system is working. Sometimes it means the state is collecting more than it is willing to invest, even while needs remain urgent and unmet. Nowhere is that contradiction clearer than in public education. Connecticut relies heavily on local property taxes to fund schools. That means a child's educational opportunity is still tied to the value of property in the town where they live. Communities with high property wealth can fund schools more easily. Communities with lower property wealth must tax harder to raise less. This structure produces predictable results. It concentrates advantage in wealthy towns and concentrates need elsewhere. And because property wealth in Connecticut is deeply shaped by historic segregation and unequal access to wealth, the outcomes are not just unequal, they are racially patterned. This is not a coincidence. It is the result of a system that protects wealth while distributing responsibility unevenly. The tax fairness package now before the legislature is an attempt to confront that reality honestly. It recognizes that wealth today is increasingly generated through capital assets rather than wages. It acknowledges that high-end income is often taxed more lightly than work, and it accepts that relying on local property taxes to fund statewide responsibilities like education produces inequality by design. The proposals are straightforward. A capital gains surcharge reflects how high-income wealth is actually earned. A modest increase in the top income tax rate affects only the highest earners. A statewide property tax on luxury residential real estate applies only to extraordinary property values, not ordinary homes. A refundable child tax credit delivers direct support to families raising children. Adjustments to fiscal guardrails allow the state to invest when revenues are available and needs are clear. Together, these policies do something important. They shift a small share of responsibility upward toward those most able to contribute. And that brings us to a difficult but necessary truth. Decisions about these policies are being made by people who, on average, are far wealthier than the residents most affected by underfunded schools, housing instability, and food insecurity. Connecticut's political leadership across branches of government comes disproportionately from the upper end of the wealth distribution. Many decision makers derive income from investments rather than wages. Many own high-value residential property. Many have benefited substantially from the same asset growth these proposals would modestly tax. That is not a moral judgment, but it matters. When lawmakers vote on policies that affect capital gains, high incomes, and luxury real estate, those decisions are not abstract. They have real economic implications for the people casting the votes. For some, the impact would be noticeable but not destabilizing. For the families these policies are meant to help, the impact could be life-changing. Recognizing this dynamic is not an accusation. It is a question of transparency and public trust. In any ethical system of governance, decision makers are expected to consider whether their personal financial interests could reasonably be perceived as influencing their judgment. That is why recusal exists not as punishment, but as protection for legitimacy. When the public sees leaders voting on tax policies that directly affect their own wealth, skepticism grows, trust erodes, and even sound policy can lose credibility. That is why clarity of purpose matters so much. If Connecticut asks more of those most able to contribute, including people who hold power within government itself, the state must be explicit about what that sacrifice is for. And the answer must begin with children. Any revenue generated by this tax fairness package, and any flexibility unlocked by modernizing fiscal rules, should be directed first to public education and the services that make learning possible. That means fully funding the education cost-sharing foundation at a level that reflects real costs, not political convenience. It means investing in housing stability, food security, and mental health supports. Because children cannot learn when their basic needs are unmet. This is not radical. It is responsible. Connecticut has the wealth. What it has lacked is the willingness to align its tax system with its values. A system that protects accumulated wealth while underinvesting in children is making a choice. A system that prioritizes surpluses over classrooms is making a choice. A system that treats racial inequity as incidental rather than structural is making a choice. The question before Connecticut is not whether it can afford to do better, it is whether it is willing to. This moment offers a choice: continue managing inequality or begin reducing it. Fiscal responsibility and moral responsibility are not in conflict. In Connecticut, they rise or fall together, and for our children, let's let them rise.